War defines humanity. An event that is supposed to rip people apart is something that, oddly enough, brings us closer together. Wars have built and destroyed great empires. They have seen some of the best and worst leaders in all of history, and it has definitely brought out the best and worst parts of human nature. The American Civil War is a great example of all these things, because in a war between two parts of a single country, you are going to see some awful but also amazing things. The Battle of Chickamauga was fought on September 18th, 19th, and 20th of 1863. The battle was fought between the Army of the Cumberland under Major General William Rosecrans and the Confederate Army of Tennessee under General Braxton Bragg. The battle took place in Chickamauga, Georgia, which is around 15 miles from Chattanooga, Tennessee. Rosecrans really wanted to capture Chattanooga, and the only thing that was standing in his way was Bragg. On June 23, 1863, Rosecrans moved his army out of its defenses at Murfreesboro, Tennessee, in order to push Bragg's army back to Chattanooga and ultimately take the city. In just 3 weeks, Rosecrans took Chattanooga, only losing 6 men, and he pushed Bragg back to the mountains of North Georgia. Everything Rosecrans was doing seemed to be working with no resistance. Bragg realized this and started to carry out his own plan. Bragg sent out scouts to get intentionally captured by the Union. He did this because he gave his scouts misinformation that he was going to flee and wanted to spread that throughout the Union forces. He was actually planning a surprise attack. Bragg was waiting on the arrival of reinforcements, 9 brigades from Virginia under the command of Lieutenant General James Longstreet. He was hoping with the spread of misinformation he could catch Rosecrans in the trap. Bragg's plan worked in getting Rosecrans to believe he was retreating further into Georgia. Bragg's plan nearly caused a Union disaster at McLemore's Cove, where the Confederates attempted to trap 2 isolated Union divisions, but some disagreement between Bragg's subordinates caused the rebels not to move for 2 days. As a result of the Confederates not moving, the Union escaped. Another opportunity to catch the Union off guard was lost to a similar reason at nearby Lee and Gordon's Mill. Rosecrans now realized the danger he was in and began concentrating his army around that mill near the banks of the Chickamauga Creek. While Bragg was waiting on the arrival of Longstreet's reinforcements, he attempted to outflank Rosecrans' left flank to the north and force his army between the Union and Chattanooga. Bragg planned on striking on September 18th, the day that the first of Longstreet's reinforcements arrived. Bragg sent General Bushrod Johnston's division and General Nathan Bedford Forrest's cavalry unit, supported by H.T. Walker's corps, to cross the creek at Reed's and Alexander's bridges, which Bragg incorrectly believed would put him north of Rosecrans' position. Attacking the left flank would roll up the Union line, force them back to McLemore's Cove, and destroy those who did not surrender. While this was happening, Major General Simon Bolivar Buckner's corps would cross at Thedford's Ford, south of the bridges. Lieutenant General Daniel Harvey Hill, who was further south, would help near Glass Mill in reserve. The fighting began around 7:30 in the morning, but Bushrod Johnston did not get his troops across until around 4:30 that afternoon. Walker ran into the Lightning Brigade of Indiana, mounted infantry led by John Wilder. Wilder's men delayed Walker's part of the Confederate advance for 5 hours. During that night, both prepared for a full-scale battle they knew was soon to come.
On September 19th, one of Rosecrans' corps commanders, Major General George H. Thomas, began the fighting. Thomas heard about an isolated Confederate brigade and sent Brigadier General John M. Brannan's division to take care of them. Instead of meeting a single brigade like they were told, Brannan's men met a cavalry unit and a division of soldiers commanded by Brigadier General States Rights Gist, was his given name at birth, of Walker Corps at Jay's Mill, near the two armies' northern flank. What came after was the beginning of one of the most intense battles in the Civil War, marked by close-quarter fighting and charges followed by countercharges that would make the Battle of Chickamauga famous. During the fighting on September 19th, Bragg relentlessly attacked the Union's left flank. The problem for Bragg was that the left was anchored by a large Union corps led by George Thomas. As a result of Rosecrans sending in reinforcements, Thomas was able to hold his position for the most part, but there was a heavy loss on both sides. That evening, Longstreet arrived with 2 more brigades to reinforce the Confederate army. Bragg decided to split his army into 2 wings, putting Longstreet and Leonidas Polk in command. Polk took control of the northern wing, while Longstreet took control of the southern wing.
Bragg's plan for September 20th was for an attack to begin at dawn on the Confederate north side and continue southward, which would drive the Union troops away from Chattanooga. Ineptitude on the part of Polk and one of his subordinates caused the attack to begin several hours late. Although a small force of Confederate troops briefly turned the enemy north, Union reinforcements drove back the Southerners. Shortly after 11 o'clock a.m., Rosecrans came to believe a Union division in the center of his line created a gap by moving out of position. In order to fill the hole that didn't exist, Rosecrans ordered another division under Thomas Wood to move northward to fill the gap. During Wood's movement, a massive Confederate attack began with thousands of Southerners charging into the real gap that was made by the Union shift. By noon, there was disaster at the Union center and right, which sent Rosecrans, several of his main subordinates, and many of their men into retreat northward to Chattanooga. Some Union soldiers eventually created a line on a series of steep wooded knolls known as Snodgrass Hill or Horseshoe Ridge. The Confederates continued to attack the hill all afternoon, but were never able to secure the position. Late in the afternoon, General George Thomas, who earned the name Rock of Chickamauga for his outstanding performance that day, withdrew his men from the battlefield back toward the safety of Missionary Ridge.
After the Union retreat back to Missionary Ridge, the Battle of Chickamauga was over. The battle was extremely costly for both sides. Rosecrans had approximately 60,000 men that fought for the Union during this battle. He had around 16,000 casualties total for his army. Bragg had approximately 68,000 men and had more than 18,000 casualties. The battle was considered a Confederate victory because they did what they wanted to do. They pushed the Union back to Chattanooga and stopped their advance. The Battle of Chickamauga had 34,624 casualties, which was second only to the Battle of Gettysburg. The Battle of Chickamauga was more or less the Confederacy's last major win of the war. From that moment on, the war would keep getting harder for the South to win until Robert E. Lee had to surrender on May 9, 1865.